Thank God it's Friday. Something else that you may or may not know is happy 2-year anniversary of Friday. So in 2 years we've had the kickoff and 17 Friday cafes. Who's here for the very first time? Who's been to a Friday cafe 2 to 5 times? 6 to 10 times. Ooh. 10 to 17. Those are our loyal advisors. So yay! So excellent. So welcome everyone. Whether you've been here 17 times with us or your very first time, we're thrilled to always be with you. Throughout our 2 years, our goals for Friday Cafes have remained, our vision have remained about really building connections with family engagement providers throughout our county, having a space to feel restored, rejuvenate, some self-care, and to expand our thinking, to really share our experiences, learn from each other, and see how we can continue to push the envelope to shift practices and change systems to better serve our families. So thank you everyone here that helps support these goals and vision. Throughout also the 2 years, we've evolved based on feedback from attendees and our advisory council. It has helped inform our theme for the year, which is to be strong for families, because we need to take care of ourselves so we're strong to best lift up the voices and stories of our families. It also has informed kind of like the path and journey we're taking this year. That has really, we've been hearing feedback that you love the reflection time, the opportunities to raise consciousness of really key topics of interest for family engagement providers, and you want now something like concrete tools for action. So we heard you, and this is why also amazing. We're so thrilled to have our conversation catalyst, because their walk and mission in life is really about calling action and bringing the voices of family leaders to lead the way and be the change makers, the powerful change makers that we know they are. So we're very excited to have Janelle and Jennifer with us today. And I am now going to then hand it over to you. So welcome. Thank you.
So good morning, everyone. My name is Janelle Fine, and I am the local chapter organizer for San Mateo County for Parent Voices. I also am the resource and referral coordinator at the 4 Cs. So that's a little bit about me and my role.
And I am Jennifer Krepke, and I am the lead chapter organizer for statewide Parent Voices. And you'll hear a little bit more about sort of my story and who I am a little bit later. But, Parent Voices is a parent-led, parent-run, grassroots organization. And we don't just say that, we really mean it. It's an organization that parents really are in the lead. And I'm really lucky enough to be sort of leading the way with our 15 chapters of Parent Voices across the state.
Okay, so just a quick little thought today. Coming into this morning, I really want to encourage the group and everyone in the room to kind of keep this mantra in mind today. We're going to be doing a lot of discussion, obviously, around, strengthening families and families maintaining them strong in our county. But what I really also want to just remind everyone is, based off my understanding of the cafes, is that folks come into this room, folks come into this space to find positive energy, support from one another, build community, and be able to be part of a change. And really keep in mind that there's a parallel between you and your families, which is that they also seek out the same things, which is one of the reasons why they seek out Parent Voices. So keeping that thought in mind throughout our day, throughout our morning, I should say, is going to be key. That the real truth is that there is so many parallels and similarities between you and what brings you to a place like this and them, and what brings them to do advocacy and want to be part of change as well. So we're going to start with an activity to kind of keep it light. There's just hands, right? There's items on the table that I want you to peek at. The goal today for this activity is to create a sparkler. Everybody knows what the 4th of July is and sparklers and what those look like, right? They're the things that light up in the sky and they're beautiful. And so we wanted to encourage you all to do a visual representation using a sparkler. So a little instruction is that essentially you have some items here in the basket that you can use to create your sparkler. And what we want you to do is create it with the thought in mind of what sparked you to work with families. So think of a time in your journey that brought you to this path of where there was a spark that happened for you and you thought, this is what I need to do. This is the work I want to do. And try to create a visual representation of that. You can use words, you can use imagery, you can use design, and really make it unique and personal to yourself. So we're going to do that for a little bit. We have about 5 to 7 minutes to work on that, and then we want to encourage you to pair share with each other about your story. So I'm going to share a little bit about my sparkler with the group. And this is a story that happened for me in 2002, hence the year on the sparkler. And there was a lot of feelings around this particular instance that happened in 2002. I had graduated high school in '99, and I was like, I want to help people. So I took on a little part-time job working on the coast side for an after-school program for a middle school. And I was helping kids in a after-school program who were part of something called the English Language Learners Program, which they were born and raised in the States, but they had a little bit of a delay in terms of their English level capacities because at home they did a lot of Spanish speaking. So they were just, needed some support around like reading comprehension, etc. I remember having a distinct conversation with the principal at the time at that school, and he said to me, "You're wasting your time. Like, they're all going to end up working in the fields anyway. Like, you really shouldn't put so much effort into, doing so much work." And I was 19, and like, he's an adult, right? And so I was like pissed that he said that. And I remember thinking to myself, that's crap. Like, that's not true, And if anybody is familiar with the coast, there is a big migrant population there. So I went to the school district and I was like, I don't think this is right. And I was terrified, right? Because I'm 19 and I don't know really how to say this. And he's like an entity. But it was actually a pretty powerful moment that made me think like, I need to do work in this type of field where I'm trying to help folks who are in my community that I can reach, considering that I spoke English and Spanish. Long story short, he had to write a letter of apology to all the parents in that from the kids in that group, and I felt really like glad about that because I felt like he owed it to them. That wasn't right. So that was my spark and my moment in my life where I was like, I got to be part of this.
And it was really exciting to sort of hear all of you talk about your sparks with one another. Like the room's energy just like ratcheted up, and I could really hear sort of this passion in your stories with each other. Even though I wasn't hearing your exact words, I could just feel your positive energy. So thank you for taking a moment and sharing with each other. So, my spark, my moment, my time in my life when I knew that I had to do something. Oprah calls it the aha moment, right? A little light bulb goes off in your brain. I had a really horrifying incident happen to me where my husband passed away suddenly. And I was a stay-at-home mom at the time with my 2 little ones in a part-day parent co-op preschool. I had graduated from high school, but I really didn't have any additional education. And all of a sudden, I was going to be the sole breadwinner for my family. And I had to figure out how I was going to raise these 2 beautiful little girls. And I knew that I had to go back to school if I had any chance of getting a job that was going to pay enough to be able to, care for them. And so I entered the CalWorks program, which for me was like one of the hardest things that I've ever had to do, to walk into a social services agency and ask for help. Was humiliating and hard and scary and overwhelming, and I was grieving and going through so much. But I also knew that I wasn't going to allow my kids to have the life of poverty, right? I wanted them to have more. And so I entered the CalWorks program, and I felt really lucky because I was able to go back to school. And I chose to go back to school to do early childhood education. I finished my AA degree, and I got my very first job working in a child care center. And I was so excited and proud, and I had, really come a long way. It had been, 2.5 years. I had built relationships. I was feeling strong. And then I got a letter from my local resource and referral agency that said, "Get on the bus. Your child care is in danger of being cut off." And I was terrified because if I lost my child care subsidy, I was going to be right back at square one. Like, that child care subsidy was what allowed me to be able to work, to go to school, to do everything that I had done. And it was kind of like the base of the house, right? Like the foundation. And without that, the whole house was just going to tumble in, right? And so they told me to get on a bus. I didn't know where I was going, literally. I didn't know who I was going with. But I figured if I want my child care, I have to be willing to fight for it. So I got on the bus that day, and we drove our way to Sacramento. And I got off the bus, and there was all these people there with blue t-shirts on. You see them in the pictures up here. With their blue t-shirts on, and I had my protest sign, and I, got off the bus and walked over to the steps of the Capitol, and I listened to these really remarkable and inspiring women. There was no men that year. And I listened to these women speak about their stories of struggle and triumph, and how they had really, gone through so much to get where they were, but there they were on the steps of the state capitol, speaking about their story. And we marched around the Capitol with our signs, and my energy is just building and building, and I'm feeling so powerful. And then we went in and we talked to our local elected leaders, and we told our really very personal stories about how childcare was so important in our lives, and how without it, we were destined to remain in poverty. And that year, in the budget, childcare was the only service that wasn't cut. And for me, I knew that it was because we had been there. It was because we had told our stories, because no longer could the legislator say, "Oh, childcare, that's the parent's responsibility." But they had to look at me. They had to look at Jennifer and say, "I don't care about you and your kids." And it's a lot harder for them to walk away when they know your story in your face. And that day at the state capitol, my moment, my spark, was because it was for the first time maybe in my entire life that I didn't feel alone. That I didn't feel isolated and alone and afraid. I felt like this amazing relief that I had this community that was going to be there to support me. And other moms and dads and grandparents and people who cared about kids who were there, all fighting for the same thing that I was. And so I went back home and I became a parent leader in Parent Voices. I didn't even know what that was. I just went to a meeting, they called me a leader, and I was like, wow, leader, leader. So I became a parent leader in Parent Voices and started volunteering some of my time. And then they asked me to come. The organizer for our area had left to pursue other things. And they asked me to come be the organizer of the chapter. Okay, the little secret, I didn't even know what an organizer was. But I knew that I loved this work and I felt really passionate about this issue. And I was like, I'll just fake it till I make it, right? I'll just do it until I figure it out. And at that time, you know, Barack Obama kind of gave us all this new image of what organizing was. But until that time, it was kind of this unknown thing to me. And so, you know, I started working 8 hours a week at my local resource and referral agency. And then pretty soon it was 16 hours, and then it was 20 hours. And then before I knew it, I was there full time, and it was 11 years later. And so, you know, I think about these moments very often in my work because it's what continues to push me and drive me. Because every time that I'm planning Stand for Children Day, which you'll get to see a video of shortly, but every time I'm planning Stand for Children Day, I remember that some mom or dad is going to come there for their very first time, and they're going to feel what I felt. Or at least I'm going to set it up so that hopefully they'll feel what I felt, because there's nothing like it, and it's irreplaceable. That feeling of connection, that moment when you don't feel alone, is extremely valuable. And then the relationships that I built with other folks in this organization it really allowed me to grow and thrive and become, you know, completely self-sufficient and take care of my family, which was my goal in the first place, right? But also to really do work that I felt passionate about. And so that was my spark. And, you know, we all have one. We all have that moment. Maybe it's not, you know, grand, but there's something that made you say, this isn't right, or I want to make sure more parents have a voice, or I want to make sure that parents have an opportunity to engage in their school community. All of you have had that moment at some point. And so I'm glad you were able to sort of put it down on paper, have a visual, put that on your bulletin board or your cubby at work, and remind yourself when you're feeling really discouraged or overwhelmed, or you know, you planned this big meeting and nobody came. Look at that sparkler and remind yourself of why you're doing this work. And hopefully that will sort of fill up your tank just a little bit, enough to keep pushing, right? To keep moving.
One thing I just want to share really quickly, when I joined this role, because I've only been the organizer for the chapter for a couple months, so I'm really new. I went to a convening that Parent Voices has annually, and what I took away from that experience, mind you, was like I was 2 weeks in or whatever, was, and when I watch this, and it always brings me to an emotional place, is strength. Strength, because these parents have this strength, and it's in them, and it thrives in them, and it's living there. And oftentimes, they don't have the opportunities or the platforms to display it, but it's in them, and it lives within them. And that's the special piece of our work, is that we have these opportunities to create moments for them to display their strength We just have to create the platforms. So it's possible. It's very possible for all of us to do it in our own work. It's just finding those moments. So after watching that and after kind of having those takeaways and those thoughts, we want to go into a different activity, which is going to mean standing up, getting out of your chairs, moving around, moving to different tables, moving to spots where you are mixed together. And we want you to think about a question as you're doing this, which is thinking about how you can provide these opportunities for families to share their powerful voice, demonstrate their strength and knowledge to shape program policy and practice. And if you aren't, please share what's getting in the way. So please mix together.
So I'm really happy that you all were able to have sort of that opportunity to share with each other. What's happening currently? Like, what are you doing in your role to really support families and to get them engaged and involved in the work that you're doing? And just as important, sort of, what are the challenges and struggles and barriers that you're facing to get there, right? Whether that's, lack of resources at the agency that you work with, or a resistance from the agency that you work with to try new things, whether it's your own fear of failure or success, or not doing it the right way, right? And I think that, it's really interesting because part of my role when I was organizing one chapter of Parent Voices, I worked at a child care resource, a referral agency on a referral line, answering calls from parents who were looking for child care. And very often they would start the conversation by saying, I need to get on your list. And then I would proceed by asking several additional questions. Tell me a little bit about yourself. Why are you looking for care? What list are you trying to get on, right? Because we have a lot of lists. Have you received cash aid in the last 24 months? Sort of that triage piece, right? Of asking those questions to kind of figure out where this person is going to fit in the service array that we have, right? And so I'm sure lots of you have those opportunities on a regular basis where people are calling you and you're kind of trying to figure out what it is that you have to be able to offer to them to support them and their family, right? And for me, those moments, picking up that phone, and even to this day in my new role, I know that every time I pick up the phone, it's a choice of whether I'm going to be a change maker, somebody who's going to change that person on the other end of the line's life by providing them sort of that little extra, right? Instead of just like, oh, here's a list of some people to call. But really like, when you call this person, please ask for this person. And then press 1 on the menu. And then you're going to get to this thing. And then this is gonna happen. And sort of walking them through what that process is gonna be like, right? And the only way that I'm able to do that, to provide that extra, is to be informed myself about what's out there, right? And to make sure that I've spent the time building relationships with others in other agencies and other places where I'm going to be sending these people, right? And making sure that I take those extra couple minutes to really inquire and engage with them about what their real needs are, right? Because sometimes they may present with one need, but actually they have lots of other things that they actually could really use some support around, right? And maybe we have a perfect program in our agency or something that I know of in the community that I can sort of support them to get involved in. And very often those phone calls were really hard because it was parents who were calling looking for help to pay for childcare. There was no money to serve them. You know, there's waiting lists in every one of these programs. And I had to tell them, you know, there's not anything available right now, but what we do have is an opportunity for you to speak out about your experience while you're waiting. And I want to invite you to come join us with Parent Voices. And that was really empowering as a worker to be able to have something concrete to be able to sort of point these families to, right? And also just really realizing that I had a lot of power in this relationship, right? I had the power to be able to provide basic information or more, extra, right? And I had an opportunity and that power to really decide what that parent's experience was going to be like moving forward. And each of you have that same power, right? You have that opportunity every day when you're talking to families to make that decision inside yourself to give that little extra. And, you know, I know it's a lot. You know, many of us have jobs. We have a lot on our plate. We have a lot of responsibilities. But the value and the feeling that you get when you're able to really change somebody's life and experience, there's really nothing like it.
We're going to talk a little bit about Parent Voices' model, its history, the challenges, and the vision for the future. And I'll let Jennifer kind of lead us into the PowerPoint.
Yeah. And I'm just really using this as a tool, as a backdrop. I'm not going to present it to you in the normal fashion. But so let's see. So Parent Voices, our mission statement. So, you know, Parent Voices, as I said, we're parent-led and parent-run. And we are a grassroots organization that's fighting for quality, affordable, accessible child care services for all families, regardless of their income, regardless of anything, for all families to have that opportunity. And how does it work? So it's really exciting because how it works in each community is a little bit different because each group of parents is a little bit different, right? And with giving them sort of the opportunity to have sort of autonomy amongst themselves to create their own sort of chapter cultures and chapter beliefs and what they want to work on and fight for in their personal communities is really important. And then they're all connected to sort of a larger network of chapters throughout the state. So there's the local work, our state work, and our federal work as well. And so we have the local chapters. Again, there's 15 of them across the state, and most of them are housed at local child care resource and referral agencies, or R&Rs, like 4Cs of San Mateo County. And there are a few others that are outliers that are housed at Title V child care centers down in San Diego. Another one that is sort of its own entity in Oakland. They have their own 501c3 and they're their own organization. And we have 2 additional chapters coming in Los Angeles, and both of them will be run out of family resource centers. And so, you know, we're broadening sort of our scope of where chapters are happening because the people are asking for it, and so we're just trying to make opportunities. So at each one of the chapters, they elect a steering committee representative. This is a parent leader who's shown some, you know, real initiative to want to sort of build their leadership development and grow and you know, be more involved in the organization. And these parent steering committee representatives sit on a board. And we meet with them face-to-face several times a year, as well as doing conference calls. But their role really is to choose our platform, and a variety of many other things. But one of their main roles is to choose our platform. So what are the issues and the key changes that they want to see based on what they're hearing in their own chapters? They bring that to the statewide group. We have a 3-day leadership convening where they come together and they talk about what the challenges and struggles are and what's holding them back. And then additionally, how do they see changing it? Like, what would make it better for them, right? How can they really begin to create these changes that are holding their families back? And so I want to give you an example. So some of the parents that were on the leadership team, as well as thousands of parents across the state, were really struggling because income eligibility in childcare had been frozen for more than 10 years. So every year when the state would pass their budget, they'd say, we're going to use the numbers from last year. Except for last year's numbers weren't last year's numbers, they were the year before's numbers, and the year before, and the year before, and the year before. So it had become 10 years of outdated income eligibility. So think about how much, milk cost 10 years ago, and how much your rent was 10 years ago, and the cost of living has increased tremendously, right? And our wages, they're going up, not much, but a little bit at a time, right? And families were literally turning down raises, turning down promotions, not working any extra hours or overtime, because if they go 1 penny over that limit, they lose their subsidy. So they get their 25-cent raise, yay! And then they lose their $2,000 a month childcare subsidy. And so they would literally go back to their jobs and say, can you please take my raise back? And the people in HR or their boss would be like, what? Take your raise back? Yeah, can you please take my raise back because I'm gonna lose my childcare, right? And so parents were just like up in arms about this, like it's not fair, right? Like, why do they continue to be able to do this year after year? And the reason why they were able to do it year after year is because nobody was saying anything about it, right? And we know how the squeaky wheel works, right? And so parents started a campaign. It literally took 3 years. It wasn't fast, change never is. And they were able to, in not this last year's budget, but the budget before, they were able to raise income eligibility limits in California to where a family of 3 can now earn $10,000 a year more and stay eligible for child care services, right? And so that, now they can take that raise. They can take that promotion. They can work a little extra during the holidays or, take that side job and keep their child care. Another thing that they said was that it was really unfair. Think about this. It's about to be tax season, right? And how many of you are just like chomping at the bit to like do your taxes? You're like, woo, I can't wait to do my taxes, right? Let me collect all those forms and all that paperwork and like make sure that I've got everything in order so that I can get on there and do my, right? Well, these families were being required to change or to recertify for their child care every 4th month. So every 3rd month, they would get a letter saying, your child care is going to be cut off unless you come in and bring all these documents, right? And so they would have to take days off of work to go collect their pay stubs from, one of our moms that testified at a budget hearing, she brought in 18 pay stubs. She had 3 jobs. She brought in her 18 pay stubs. She had to go, her child had a special need, so she had to go to the doctor to have them sign a form. She was in school in the evenings after her 3 jobs. She was in school in the evening, and so she had to get all of her professors to sign a form. She had to get her counselor at school to sign a form. She had to bring in her report card from the prior semester. She had to bring in just tons of documentation, right? All to say that you're still eligible for the thing that you already just told us all the same information 3 months ago. Nobody's winning the lottery. So this was a huge burden for families. Imagine having to do this with 2 or 3 kids in tow, 2 or 3 different buses to get to each one of these places to collect each one of the forms, and making sure that you got to the agency to turn it all in time to be able to keep your child care. Poverty is a full-time job, folks. And so they were like, this is wrong. And so we also passed a bill that changed it so that these families could have 12 months of continuous eligibility. So they were able to keep their child, they certified, they brought all their paperwork, and they were able to keep their child care for a year. Now, how did those things happen? They didn't just fall out of the sky like, this is what Parent Vooices is going to work on. What we're going to do is we talk to the families about the struggles and challenges that they face, and then we make sure that we find opportunities for them to change those challenges and struggles, right? And not just for themselves, but for all other families like them in their community. And so that's our steering committee. And then we have our statewide organizers, which is me and one other person, Mary Ignatius, and we're a mighty team of 2. We are the communications, we are the grant writers, we are the trainers, we are the organizers and community outreach people. We do it all, right? And I wouldn't have it any other way, but we could use some help, admin help. Okay, so recruitment. So how do we do recruitment? So, recruitment is one of those things where you're like, okay, give me the list of 5 things that I can do, and then people are going to show up at my meeting. No, it's not how it works. Recruitment is literally about relationships. Parent Vooices is about relationships, okay? Parent Vooices and recruitment in general is about building relationships with somebody else to build that trust so that then they will come to your meeting so that you can provide them with some kind of information, right? And opportunities to hear and listen about what they want and need, right? Then it's amazing because once you do that, oh, and by the way, we always provide dinner, childcare, translation at all of our meetings. That's just like a given. We have live interpretation, all the materials are translated, as well as, food and childcare. So, and, we don't have our meetings at 11 o'clock on a Tuesday. We typically have them, Thursday or Friday nights, Saturdays, in the evening, so that families can make it. And, we do have the joy of being housed in resource and referral agencies. So we do have parents that we're connecting with, right, on a regular basis. They're coming in looking for childcare. And many of them are having to get on a waiting list, and so they're angry and challenged and frustrated, and so that's the perfect opportunity, right? We also, do a lot of this work through child care centers. I don't know, do you have Cadango on this side of the bay? No? On the other side of the bay, we have Cadango. And it's a Title V center-based program. You probably have something similar to that here. And we really went in and began to build relationships with those center directors and the folks that were running these child care centers because they also have their own waiting lists, right? And they also have the families that have real challenges inside those centers that it's wonderful that they have care from 7 a.m. to 6 p.m., but mom also has a second or third job in the evening, and they don't have a subsidy for that. They're on a waiting list, right? And so they might not be getting the full care that they need. And so it's a really great opportunity when families are struggling to have their needs met, to provide them with an opportunity to share what their experience is with other like-minded moms and dads, right? In a group that has an opportunity to really make those changes, okay? All right, so communications. So, we do lots of different things. I want you all to follow us on Twitter and Facebook so you can see what we're doing. But it's a real great way. Parents are they're on social media. So what we found is that, while many of the families that we work with, many of them are low-income families, and, they may not have a computer in their home, but pretty much all of them have a smartphone, okay? Yeah, go ahead.
So it's interesting talking about, social media and communications. So just really quickly, our local chapter, they, were like a mighty team of 4. And that number actually grew from my predecessor who did the work for a whole year of trying to do this like outreach to parents. And she got 4 folks who were committed. And so recently, but we didn't have like a social media presence. San Mateo didn't have a social media presence. So recently I met with one of the parent leaders and I just said to her like, hey, would you be interested in maintaining a Facebook page for us? And she was like, sure. Yeah, no worries. I'll do it. At first she was a little nervous because she's like, what am I posting? What am I saying? And I said, we're going to do it together, but I think you can fly after that. Like it'll be fine. And now we're at 247 friends. Jennifer's one of our friends. In the matter of like a week, she's done this. You've seen the page. She's like posting, promoting. It's incredible, all on her own. I'm not guiding. I'm not telling her what to do or say. And she's really made it her own. And her feedback to me was that she felt like this was her way to contribute to the chapter and to the team, and she felt really, really empowered. And I told her, you already had the power, like it was already there. You just needed the opportunity to do this. And this is something that she really loved, which was promoting on social media. So it's just an example. It's a small example, but it's an example of how a parent can be given an opportunity to display their strength, their voice, and it's working out. So,
yeah, absolutely. And, the whole time we're doing this work, we're looking for those opportunities, right? And you are going to have these opportunities in your work all the time, right? Where you may think about when you're having a meeting or you're going to have a group discussion with families. Instead of making your own copies, maybe asking one of the parents to like come and do the sign-in or the check-in, having them make the packets, providing opportunities for them to take a part in the agenda, right? Inviting them to help you create the agenda, really giving them leadership and ownership of their experience, right? And once you provide just those very basic sort of opportunities, you will really watch and see how the seeds begin to sort of like sprout and grow, right? All right. So we have core values, and our core values really are about, again, relationships. We have this value around relationship with each other and this social change that we all want to see, right? We want a world where our children have the opportunity to learn and grow and develop. And it's really interesting because we have all this great brain research on brain development and all these, synapses that are happening in children's brains when they're at their earliest years. And we know this, right? But there's far too many children who don't have an opportunity to have those experiences, right? And so we're really looking at creating a social change, right? Some opportunity for all children to have these experiences. And so, Parent Voices is really based on that value and making sure that we're, empowering the community to create that change for themselves. So what we always say is, we're not giving parents power. We're not like, come to Parent Voices, we're going to empower you, right? Parents come with their own power already. They have that power. They are powerful. They are strong, right? It's about making sure that we provide them opportunities to show that power and strength. They are experts. Trust. They are experts at systems. They know the systems better than any of us. because they live them every day. And until you have like stood in that line, got that application this thick, gone through that process, like multiple times over and over and over again, and then they lose all your paperwork and you got to do it again. These families are experts. They know what's wrong with the system. They also know exactly how to fix it. They know what needs to be done. And it's about providing them those opportunities to get their ideas out there. And these are just more of the same thing. We also use the media a lot. And we do this, this is the Speaker of the House, everyone, with our parent leaders. And, we try to come up with sort of these catchy little things that media loves catchy things, right? And so you'll notice in the video that you saw a little while ago, you saw them with a watering can. And the theme last year that the parents came up with was help them grow. I think that was it, help them grow, and or help us grow. And the waiting list has got to go. That was a little chant. But it was so beautiful to see it sort of come to fruition, right? It's like we all get on a call, we're all in a room together, what are we going to do? What's this year going to look like? What's the theme? What do we want to present? And it comes together in this really beautiful representation on Stand for Children. Stand for Children is 100% planned by the parents. And you'll notice that we had 2 youth MCs. Both of those little girls, their moms have been in Parent Voices since they were tiny, right? And they've kind of grown up in this organization. And then they were like, we want to be the MCs. And we were like, yes, right? And so they practiced, like several times. We had meetings together. They came up to Sacramento early. They were on the phone calls. They were amazing. And they did a spectacular job, like presenting to literally 1,000 people at the state capitol. It was pretty remarkable to watch. And so we also have done things like the state unfair. So, every year the state has a state fair. And this was, when we did this, it was actually during the height of the recession, and it was like programs were being cut all over the place, and families were really struggling. And the media, that was the most media hits we ever got for anything we've ever done. Like, they were all over that state unfair. And so they really liked that. But think creatively about different strategies to use the media. So what doesn't work? What doesn't work? And the very first 2, I think, are really the most important. Controlling the agenda and not listening to what parents need and trying to do for the parents. You spoke about that, right? Instead of doing things with the parents, right? So this happens literally on a regular basis, where somebody will create a beautiful report about parent engagement, about quality childcare, about challenges parents face, but they will create those reports with no input from parents or from consumers, the actual people who they're talking about, right? And so, and then they'll say, we want to get your feedback on our product, right? Here, what do you think about what we did? And that's their opportunity that they're giving to parents to give feedback. But the product's already done, right? And so what we really try to encourage and what we've tried to insert ourselves in Parent Voices to make sure that the parents are there to create the report in the first place, right? And one example of that is right now in California, there's a whole thing happening to reimagine what a CalWorks system, which is our welfare system, what success looks like in our CalWorks programs. So every county in California is going to be embarking on a whole new process whereby they are going to have to measure their success in a variety of different ways. So it used to be that the only measure of success, literally the only measure of success at the county was the work participation rate. How many parents have you got from welfare to work? That's it. Not like how have you helped people, have you supported them, have they gotten education, nothing. Welfare to work requirement, that was it. And so we came up with 36 measures now of what success looks like. And that happened because we demanded that Department of Social Services in Sacramento actually engaged with the families that were part of their program. And not just like, please let us come. No, they pay the parents $125 for every meeting they attend. They provide them with transportation, childcare, meals, and everything they need to be there. And they have really listened. They put their money where their mouth was, and they really gave opportunities to current and former participants to be a part of the process, right? And so this is just another example of how we've been able, through our relationships, to be able to build opportunities for families to really make changes in their community that are going to be long-lasting. Another thing that was developed as part of that process was a customer satisfaction survey that all participants are going to be able to fill out. And guess who got to create the actual surveys? The parents and Parent Vooices, right? And so you think those questions look different than what they would have created? Yeah, they do, right? So things are going to be changing in departments of social services, and they're going to be held accountable in different ways than they've ever been held accountable before. And they're going to have to do a county self-assessment, and then they're going to have a corrective action plan of things that they need to work on. And we're going to start seeing some real changes. And so, that doesn't happen just magically. It happened because we took those opportunities to make sure that they had those chances to give their input, right? Because again, those families are experts. All right.
This morning's conversation, I feel like, is not an easy one, and it might be a little bit of a unique topic because it is challenging us who work in this field to think a little bit differently, perhaps, in terms of the way we interact with our clients and our parents and our families. However, it's a really, really important piece to kind of think about.
And we're really excited and looking forward to part 2, continue this discussion. But I really wanted to just thank you all for letting myself and I know Janelle to come today to share this work with you all about what we're doing. It's just one way, but it's our way. And for being vulnerable and for talking with each other and really thinking about these issues maybe in a different way. And we appreciate you, and we look forward to seeing you again next time. So thank you.